case right versus wrong.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today on the defendant's side, we have Ms. Wright, and on the prosecuting side, we have the lawyers of the deceased, Mr. Wright. Ms. Wright is being accused of committing the murder of her husband. Her neighbor, Mr. Hales, found him hung by a rope early morning on a cold day. First, we will hear from the defendant's side, and then we shall hear from the prosecuting side. Thank you, Judge Torres. Today I will be defending Ms. Wright, who is being wrongly accused of committing murder. Ms. Wright is an elderly woman who used to sing in the church choir and was dedicated farm wife. Mr. and Mrs. Wright had a long and stable marriage and always kept to themselves. There were never any complaints made to them, and they were never involved in any problems. Do you honestly think that a woman I just described is capable of killing her husband, who she had been married to for more than 20 years? Ms. Wright is innocent because there were never any evidence found, and it is physically impossible for her to have committed the crime. Plus, there is no motive. I say it is physically impossible for an elderly woman to have the strength to hold her husband down long enough to tie a rope around his neck and strangle him until out of breath. I would like to have Mr. Hales to stand to ask him a couple questions. Hello, Mr. Hales. You were the first person to discover the crime scene. Can you describe what you saw today?
It was a cold morning when I decided to visit the Wright's residence in order to talk to something about me. It was a cold morning when I decided to visit the Wright's residence in order to talk about something with Mr. Wright. I knocked several times, but there was no clear answer, so I decided to walk in myself. As I walked in the house, I noticed Mrs. Wright rocking back and forth in the chair. She looked sort of happy and made up.
Then what?
I asked her if I could see Mr. Wright, and she just giggled. So then I asked if he was home, and she answered, yeah, but he's dead.
Did she say how he died?
Yes, she said he died from a rope around his neck.
What did you do next, Mr. Hale?
I ran for some help and then ran upstairs to find him lying dead in bed. I went back to Mrs. Wright to ask if she had called anyone, and she said no. I asked if she had seen anyone come in, and she answered no. She also said she was sleeping with him, but she did not hear anything out of the ordinary.
Did you go back to the crime scene? And if you did you find any evidence of some sort?
I did return, but nothing was found.
Thank you. That is all. Okay, now let's hear from the opposing
Is guilty
side.
of committing the murder of her husband. Neighbors have said that Mr. Wright was a very unpleasant man, and that made Mrs. Wright very unhappy. Mrs. Wright was a very happy woman, and to be put in an environment of this sort made her go insane. That is why she killed her husband. There were no intruders in the house, and she was the only one there, so who else could it be? You mean to tell me that someone broke into your house without any damages, then they went into your bedroom and killed your husband, who was lying a couple inches away from you? Why was it that the supposed murderer ruthlessly took your beloved husband's life and not yours, leaving you behind as a witness? I have asked psychologist Sigmund Freud to join us today to get a professional perspective of this. Can Mr. Freud please come to the stand?
The conscious mind is an active mind that is always alert, but the unconscious mind stresses all the negative memories you have away. Miss Wright could have stored that moment away, telling herself that she did not do anything because that moment is too dramatic for her. I must also say that when a person is falling asleep, they go through 4 stages. It is reasonable for Miss Wright to not have heard her surroundings because she could have been at stage 3, which is deep sleep.
Thank you, Mr. Freud. That is all.
Now we have heard both sides, so thank you. We will now have recess to discuss the both sides.
Recess adjourned, now presenting Judge Torres.
After several hours of discussing the evidence presented, the jury has reached a verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Mrs. Wright, not guilty of first-degree murder.
Woohoo!